Good morning. I'm just gonna be working on this dress here, and so I thought I'd just come hang out with y'all. And yeah, so I put the collar in twisted. It wasn't really backwards, but so the straps. So this is what we're working on this morning. I'm finishing this up. So I wanted these little strappies here to have the seams against the skin so you couldn't see them, so it would look nice. But apparently when I did that, I flipped the collar. So gotta take it out and put it back in the right way. So seam ripping, which is never my favorite, but you know, sometimes you gotta do things you don't like seam ripping. And luckily it's not a lot of seam ripping, so there are some people, I don't know them, who find seam ripping therapeutic. I find it very frustrating because I don't like to go backwards on things. But so I try to get it right the first time. I think that's got it. Let's find out. Ooh, real close. All right. Seam ripping is almost as exciting as pattern cutting. It's one of those boring things that you gotta do sometimes. But then you can get to the good parts. There we go. So now we've got it all apart. Flip it around the right way. And this is a piece that has sort of a slant to it at the bottom, so it fits at an angle, which is a little bit different than normal dresses. So should be able to, yeah. So we're gonna go over to the sewing machine and do a stitch along the short sides, and then I'll turn it right side out and do a stitch on the long side. And try to not put my hand over the camera every time I move it. We're very high tech around here with our cameras on gooseneck, our phones on the gooseneck things to swivel around. All right. Just double check it. Yes. Okay. Fantastic. Do the same thing on the other side. Might be easier to go ahead and flip it now. So this dress, it has a lining in the top, so we got to sort of double stitch everything. Not the whole way, but pretty close. There's our other edge. Triple check it before we stitch up the side seams. Perfect. All right. Now we'll go back in and restitch those side seams, and then we can move on. Usually I use a serger whenever possible, and I'm glad that I did not do it for this part of the project, because it would have been a lot more seam ripping and a lot more fiddly bits to try and get it all back together again. So thanks, past me. End of our bobbin. All right, we got one seam. We're gonna do this other seam real quick. You can see all the times that I had to go in here and fix this up. These are all the tails. So I'm going to trim those up before we flip it right side out because I'm confident that I got it right this time. And it probably wouldn't really show because of the knit and everything, but it is so this dress is intended for something with at least 30% stretch, which means that when you stretch it to measure there's a little chart basically that if you have a 2-inch piece, how far you can stretch it is the percentage of stretch, and then you look to see what it looks like when it comes back, and that's called the recovery. So some of the recommended fabrics for this particular dress are things like scuba, which is not forgiving. I just finished working with scuba for the Marvin the Martian project, and I do have some of that left over, so I might try and make like a scuba top out of it for like everyday wear, but that is an unforgiving fabric. You can always see the holes from, like, if you take stitching out, or if you use traditional pins to pin it together, it just shows everything. So it's not a material I want to work with a whole lot, or maybe I do so I can get really good at it. I don't know. There we go. All right, got a few stray threads out here, no big deal. We'll do a final cleanup once everything is done to get any sort of small strays that we missed. Otherwise, yep, neck piece looks good. And you can see it. There we go. Much better. Yes. I had it up on the side a little bit, and I was about to get concerned. Okay, so done our top piece, and set the front side for now is what directions say. So I'll follow directions. We'll just set her right here. Now we're going to work on our back piece. My assumption is so we've got our lining, which is this piece that fell right here, and that's going to go on the inside, and we're going to stitch the lining together, and then we're going to use some elastic to go in the back. So when you're working with low back or backless kinds of shirts, they need the elastic in the back because we were talking about that recovery before. Well, the fabric recovery is by itself isn't enough to keep the top up, is basically what happens. So we are going to need, let's see, this 14.5 inches of elastic. So I'm gonna go right over here. And have our handy dandy spool of elastic. I use it for making sleep masks and also for face masks. So I've got my piece cut out for the face mask. So we're gonna set that aside and cut out 14.5 inches of elastic. I actually have 2 more spools of this, so I may never run out. So every square that's on my table is 1 inch, which makes measuring very easy. There we go, 14 and a half. Go ahead and put our elastic back. I have a real bad habit of making a mess while I'm working on a project, so maybe y'all can help me stay a little cleaner. So before I do this part, I'm gonna actually switch out my serger threads and attach the bottom so I don't have to remember to forget to do it later. So switching out serger threads is actually not terrible. It is not my favorite thing to do because I like to keep the same color in there just because it takes time and I get impatient. There we go. So this is my little tail. We had to cut some extra to make this a nice long piece in the back. So the inside of this fabric is white because it's printed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my serger cones to white instead of the black that I usually keep on there. Good enough. So got my 4 cones of white. And my favorite way to change my serger thread, because it's the easiest, is the super secret trick that probably isn't super secret. So my sergers are already threaded, and sergers have 4 loops to thread through. So your sewing machine has 2. You have the bobbin and you have the needle on the top, typically. Hey, how's it going? Yeah, so serger has 4, and it's got all sorts of little bits and bots that you've got to thread through. So for the lazy sewist, changing serger threads, that you make your cut right close to the cones. These are the cones. And then we put our new cones on. And then we take the top of the serger thread. There you go. And we're going to tie a tiny little knot in the thread that we have, and just one regular knot. And then that should rethread the machine with the new color, and I don't have to spend 10 minutes rethreading it. So we'll see. Sometimes it works, sometimes I don't tie the knots great. If they're too loose, they slip apart, and if you make them too big or the tail's too long, that it gets caught up and stuff anyway, but we'll see. Should work. All right, last one. I've got all my knots tied, and I've got my piece of testing fabric basically. So you can see I changed from red to black before. I'm just gonna run it through the serger and see if we can change it from black to white. So it was a little angry with me, but we got it. And now we got a white thread, and I don't have to spend 10 minutes rethreading this, even though it seems like it took 10 minutes to tie those tiny knots. So we're gonna take the back of our skirt now, and we're going to put the right sides of the fabric together, which means the printed sides, and we're gonna stitch it. And sergers, I like sergers for lots of reasons, but one of the cool things about it is they have little blades built into the sides. So as you are sewing, it takes everything has a seam allowance, and that's what makes your clothes not fall apart. So the serger takes the seam allowance and sort of folds it into the threads and cuts off the extra. So. And there it is. So we got a little bit extra over here on this side. Not quite sure what happened, but we'll figure that out as we go. Since we are doing this sort of high-low thing here, I think that I maybe cut the wrong thing. I was using the projector, so we'll find out. So we've got our one piece now, and so come back over here now, and according to our directions, take the back piece and the lining piece, right sides together. It's all blending together. So I've got my lining piece here, and making sure it's the right direction. I should have checked that. There we go. I had it pinned, so I was confident I had pinned it properly, but never can tell. All right, so we're gonna take our lining piece, and we'll go ahead and use some of our Wonder Clips, which are these cool guys. We can actually use the serger for this stitch, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna stitch straight across the top, and then we will make a casing for our elastic, which we can't do with the serger without disengaging the blade. So I have a perfectly good sewing machine right there. Cool. So instructions say that we will run a stitch along the top. Get the right sides together, sew along here, turn them right sides out, and then stitch a 1/2 inch away from the seam to make our casing. Cool. Easy enough. And there we go. We got our top seam. So then what we're going to do is flip it right side out, like so. And we're going to make another seam using the sewing machine, a 1/2 inch, so that we can then put the elastic in the back. There are markings on my sewing machine plate that tell me what the seam allowance is, so I can just line it up and follow those markings. Now we have our casing, and we backstitch the edges so it's nice and strong. So now we're going to put the elastic through the casing. So what I like to do, so there is the safety pin method, which is fine, but my super secret method is to use the bodkin. And this has a ribbon tied to it right now, and I'll also use this for turning. So I'll untie our ribbon. So this is a bodkin, just like Shakespeare's odds bodkins. I'm not sure what the etymology is of all that, or why they're called the same thing, but you can get all sorts of different sizes and stuff. So this one, you can see it's had some love because it's no longer straight. They can bend when they warm up with your hands, they bend kind of easily. So what I do is, especially with this thinner elastic, it fits really nice, just like you're threading a needle. And then I'll tie it off on the end. And now I have a whole bunch more surface area to be able to thread the casing through. So I go just like this. So I don't know if y'all can see that. So that's now inside the fold that we just made. It's called a casing. Now I can take my bodkin and just like hanging a curtain. The only thing you want to be careful of is make sure that you catch the tail of the elastic and you don't pull it all the way through. And I pull all the way out the other end. So now it looks like this. And I will untie my knot. Let me a wonder clip here so I can clip the elastic on this end. So I don't have to worry about losing it and having to do it all over again. There it goes. Tied my knot too well. And take the bob pin off. Make sure everything is still straight. And then I very slowly relax the gathering that's happened over here. And I've lost the other end. So we will pin it this time. It's been a minute since I worked with elastic in this kind of manner. But that's okay. It's not too far. Oh, pull it out and do it again. Yeah, you're right, friends. That is definitely going to save me more time. So I'm not even going to bother knotting it because it's a short distance. So I did a lot when I was working on my historically accurate bell dress. I did a lot of threading of ribbon when I was making the panniers, which is the piece that sits underneath to make it poofy and table-like. So anything that I can do to make threading things through casings better, I'm going to do. Or faster, because that took a lot of time. Cool. All right. I'll grab another pin and pin it in so things don't get minds of their own. So now we've got our back with our elastic in it. And this is the inside where the lining will be, and this is the outside. All right, I've done those directions. What's next? All right, so we're gonna back stitch over the edges. So you always wanna leave that little bit, right? So we're gonna back stitch over the edges with our machine. Oh, I see. Okay, that's fine. We just combine two steps. So we're gonna stitch this on so it doesn't go anywhere. And then we'll put the dress together. So now that we have back stitched on it, we can not worry about that elastic disappearing inside. So we did that. So the next thing that the directions say to do is place the front and back sides, right sides together. The lining's on the outside. So we've got our back piece and our front piece over here. All right. Now pick up this is what the directions say. Hey Robin, we're making a dress today for a friend, a custom fit dress with this very fun fabric that is not safe for work. And we're gonna make her a matching mask so she can be very stylish. So we're reading our directions. These are what the directions say right now. Now pick up the front lining, ... It's very ominous. This is our front. We're gonna lay it right there on top of the back. Now pick up the front lining. I'm in suspense. And flip it over the straps and the collar to place it right sides together with the back lining. Oh, okay, yeah. Now both the lining and main fabric are right sides together. That is a true statement. Line up the raw edges of all 4 layers of the fabric. Use your sewing machine. Stitch 2 inches down, starting at the top edge. I see. Okay. All right. I'm with you now. Yeah, I got it. So we're taking our 2 pieces and we're flipping the lining over like this. And then we now have 4 pieces of fabric instead of just the 2. Okay. I got you. So I want to make sure all these pieces are lined up. Excellent. There it is. And we're going to stitch 2 inches on both sides. And we're going to use the sewing machine because the directions say sewing machine. It's okay. It'll be hidden so you won't see the edges anyway because we're going to fold them over and it's going to be all encased. There we go. Just quadruple checking so I don't have to rip any seams out. Alright, I was closer to 3 inches, but it should be fine. And now we take our other side and do the same thing. So I'm going to match up these folds here, fold it over. Make sure everything is flat and lined up. Knit fabrics can be tricky because they like to roll on the edges. So we want to make sure that's not rolled up in there. Right. Let's see how we did. All right. Lined up all the 4, we did that. Separate the lining layers away from the main layers. Stitch down the length of the lining and main fabric, starting where you left off from the previous stitch. You may choose to finish the seams. Okay, so what it's telling us to do is, so this is the current state of our dress. So we've got all 4 of these layers. So now what it wants us to do is that we're gonna take, okay, all right, so we're gonna take these are the 2 layers. This is the yeah, so this is the lining in the back. Turn down top edge, separate the lining layers away from the main fabric layers again, stitch down the length of the lining and the main fabric starting where you left off. Did I miss a step? I certainly hope not. I hope I didn't miss the... No, that's right. Okay. Sometimes sewing math is hard. Oh no, and I missed a spot. So before I go any further, I'll sit and think about it for a second while I take out this seam. Actually, I don't have to take it out. I just sew straighter. Let's check the other side while we're at it. Oh, I did the same thing over here. Why'd y'all let me do that? Okay. This looked deceptively simple. All right, let me sit down for this one. Okay. The other reason to not use serger, because when it cuts away those tiny bits of fabric, you can't get those back. All right, but we don't have to take the whole thing out, just this little bit at the top here. It's all very exciting, I know. So much seam ripping. And this is what I do when y'all aren't here too, that when I'm just sewing by myself. I read the pattern out loud, I ask the pattern what it's thinking. I sometimes ask the pattern designer what they're thinking in the very nebulous ask the universe sort of thing. You didn't know that sewing was so philosophical, did you? There we go. All right. So I just pulled out this little bit right there and pull this back. There we go. All right. So what we'll do is make sure that the elastic's peeking out. And I just saw those there. And I'm gonna pin it to remind myself that that's where I want to go. Do the same thing over here. Let's see what I actually did. Okay. So okay, so it was close. So this is just a little bit. And you can sort of see got a little bit away from me up there. So what I'll do is I'm going to start my stitch down here and move it back up. And then I'll be forced to face music about what these directions actually mean. There we go. Beautiful. All right, now let's do this other side. All right, awesome. So now we've got elastic cased, yep, I said it, cased in right here. Okay, so let's try this again. We flipped it over the collar and the straps to put right sides together with back lining. Did we do that? Yes, we did that. I hope we did that. All right, flipped over the straps, there and there. All right, we did all 4 layers. All right, separate the lining layers away from the main fabric layers again. So here is one lining. There it is. All right, so separate the linings away from the main fabric layers again. Stitch down the length of the lining and the main fabric starting. Okay, there we go. I figured it out. We're all very excited. So I'm going to take my piece here. So we stopped stitching right here. Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run a stitch up here. So this is the, right? Yeah. I'm going to stop questioning myself. Okay. Yes. All right. So we want to make sure we don't catch the straps in there. So what's going to happen is we're going to stitch the lining here to where we stopped, and then all the way down the rest of the dress. Yes. All right, you may choose to finish the seams. Hem the dress. You can choose to finish the lining. Oh, we're at the end, y'all. Okay, I was going to stop in 5 minutes, but I think we can finish this, at least without the finishing. But we're almost done making this, so all of that seam ripping seems worth it now because it wasn't that much. Okay.